It's Tuesday, May 17. In the headlines, President of India addresses Jamaica's Parliament, St. Thomas Health Services being assessed, tributes to late veteran journalist and playwright Barbara Gludon. Regionally, June 23 election set for Grenada. And in sports, Reggae Girls coach plans to resign. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I am Simone Absalom Gale. His Excellency Ram Nath Kovind, President of the Republic of India, addressed a joint meeting in Parliament on Tuesday. The address is part of planned activities of a 4-day state visit to the island by the Indian President that began on Sunday, May 15. On Monday, President Kovind paid a courtesy call on Prime Minister Andrew Holness. The meeting included the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding which will provide for training through Jamaica's Foreign Service Institute.
I stand here today not only as a visiting head of a state, but as a representative of a fellow nation with a shared tradition. Madam Speaker, yesterday I began my visit with paying my obeisance at the memorial of the Right Excellent Marcus Garvey. His pioneering leadership against injustice and discrimination has inspired generations across the globe, giving dignity and a better life to millions. Members and friends, in India, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, revered by the people, dedicated himself for the uplift of the downtrodden and eradication of social evils. He introduced the provisions for social empowerment in the Constitution and was rightly called the architect of the Indian Constitution. I feel grateful for the gesture of Jamaican government to name an avenue in Kingston after Dr. Ambedkar, which I inaugurated yesterday.
Since touching down on Jamaican soil, President Kovind also visited National Heroes Park in Kingston, where he laid a floral tribute at the shrine of national hero, the Right Excellent Marcus Garvey. He was accompanied by Minister of State in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Alando Terilong, First Lady of India, Savita Kovind, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Olivia Grange, and Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, Denzel Thorpe. President Kovind's visit to Jamaica is a first for an Indian president over the 60 years of relations between the two countries. He's scheduled to depart the island on Wednesday, May 18. The government is moving to increase its footprint in the pharmaceutical industry, and Indian companies are being invited to invest. Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Senator Auburn Hill, says Indian companies, particularly those involved in pharmaceuticals, are welcome to get involved in Jamaica's Caymanas Special Economic Zone in St. Catherine. The minister says approximately 1,000-acre campus will be developed under the Jamaica Special Economic Zone Authority regime and is an opportunity to further strengthen the commercial collaboration between Jamaica and India. The minister notes that due to the coronavirus pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war, long-chain supplies from Russia to Egypt are now problematic. He says, quote, Jamaica is ideally situated next to the largest economy in the world, the United States of America, and Canada is right there, and we have Latin America and the Caribbean, end quote. Minister Hill made the comments while participating in the courtesy call on Prime Minister Andrew Holness by President of the Republic of India, His Excellency Ram Nath Kovind, on Monday. Calls are being made for additional legislation to protect Jamaica's senior citizens. Senator Dr. Floyd Morris told the Upper House on Friday that there is a need to protect our elders, pointing to insufficient health care and the general response from society.
Those individuals, Senator Braham, who have worked long and hard and toiled and labored for our country, needs to be protected, because it galls me, Mr. President, every time I listen to the news and I hear of the abuse that is being meted out to our senior citizens by individuals in the society. And it is a sick society that engages in such abuse of the older population.
Senator Dr. Sophia Longmore stood in support of the motion. She notes the increase in the number of senior citizens in Jamaica compared to the decline in child population.
The two major implications of that sustained decline in child population are, one, that you'll have a reduction in total fertility rate to below the replacement level of fertility, which is at now 2.1 per woman, and of course the increases in the other populations that I mentioned before. Population projections indicate that the working age population should reach its maximum in 2020 and then decline thereafter.
She says the increase in aging population also presents economic opportunities.
The increasing number of elderly offers an expanded customer base and new markets, as well as an enlargement of the pool of older workers available for employment. Based on the projected increases in older population in Jamaica, there is no doubt that older workers will increasingly become key players in the successful development of both public and private sector.
Senator Longmore also points to implications in agriculture.
And I cannot help but recognize that in these rural areas, a significant amount of these elderly individuals are in the farming sector or have been traditional farmers. And so the initiatives to enable their development could significantly improve the lives of the elderly persons in those communities. But the fact is that they're also moving now into more urban settings.
The members of the Upper House also set aside time to pay tribute to veteran journalist and playwright Barbara Gluden, who died on Thursday, May 12, at the age of 86. The longtime host of Radio Jamaica's Hotline died days after her husband Ansel, who passed on April 30.
The Gordon Town community, to which I belong, has suffered a great loss. First with the loss of Ansel Gluden, and now with the loss of Mrs. Barbara Gluden. When I wrote a tribute to her on Facebook, I think I expressed my deepest sentiment. It is difficult to play a tribute to a woman who has played such monumental roles and who is so multifaceted: a journalist, a producer, a theater personality, and someone who was Hotline became the voice and the soul of the nation.
Ms. Gluden was one of those persons, whether or not you agreed with the positions she took, you had to respect the way she was fervent and determined to get her positions across. And outside of that, I grew up with pantomime, and I've often said, this is one of the things my children have not gotten the chance to know, is pantomime in Jamaica. The Ward Theatre is still special to me in my heart, and Ms. Gluden contributed to Jamaica with her writing for the pantomime and her book, Moonshine and Nancy, I think those are things that we need to keep alive.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness is working on an assessment of the health services and infrastructure in St. Thomas. Portfolio Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the planned development of the parish will see the population rise, thereby increasing the demand for health services. He discussed the plans at the Yalas Health Centre recently. Gabriel Thompson has more in this report.
A new town centre, a new police station, a new fire station, highways and housing developments, those are just some of the government's plans for St. Thomas in the near future. The parish is a stone's throw away from the nation's capital, Kingston, so its development is expected to drive migration. Hence, the health minister's plans to renew the parish's health system.
And that review is going to look at where the population centres are, look at what the requirements are for health centres like Yalas, the hospital, which by the way has benefited from a substantial overhaul. Started before my time, we finished it. If you go to the hospital now, you will see that it's a much nicer facility than it was, let's say, 5 years ago.
He says as it stands, the hospital has the capacity to serve an increase in patients, but that could change. Dr. Tufton says the Yalas Health Centre is not equipped to handle an increase in population.
Right now you have about 25,000 cases, I'm told, that you handle here, visits per year. But the population centre is expanding and access is improving. And so we're going to have to take a very keen look to see what can be done. And I think Yalas will benefit over the next few years.
Fortunately, the health centre will not have to wait for aid in development, as it has become the latest facility to benefit from the ministry's Adopt a Clinic initiative.
It is more than a recognition of a need, as important as that criteria is, that characteristic, that feature is. The adoptions tend to be almost a sentimental attachment to a community. It's a recognition of the value of that community to the adopter's upbringing. Because even though the rules don't say you have to come from the place to adopt, of the 35 or 36 adoptions we have, I'm prepared to tell you, it's either by institutions that are located in the area or by people who were born and grew up in the area, left, and want to contribute to the development of the area.
The sponsors of this adopted health facility are Mr. and Mrs. Foster of the D. Terence Foster Foundation.
When I look around and I see the clinic, I could see that our clinic, even though we've had some addition, the population has grown so much more than it used to be. The needs of the clinic is still extremely significant. And you know, what we're doing is, although it is a significant part, it doesn't meet the needs of the clinic. So this clinic needs a lot more. You can look at the staff, of course, has grown much more than when I used to be here. The patient load is growing much more. And things have gone so much more difficult compared to 40 years ago or more. So the need is there.
Non-communicable diseases, NCDs, are now recognized as a real and growing threat to population health and development, a threat that is magnified by and during public emergencies like the COVID-19 pandemic. It's public knowledge that persons with underlying illnesses, like those classified as non-communicable diseases, are more vulnerable to severe illness if they contract the virus. As we will hear from a principal investigator of the Caribbean Institute for Health Research, UWI-MONA, Professor Alafia Samuels, NCDs are dangerous even without the added danger of a contagious virus.
Okay, so what happened is that, say, 50 or 100 years ago, the main problems were communicable diseases. Polio, diphtheria, tetanus, tuberculosis. Over the years, immunization, yes, the same immunization like we get for COVID. Immunization against all of these diseases have changed the face of the disease pattern and also allowed people to live much longer. because children used to die a lot in early days from all of these preventable diseases. So we have kind of conquered that, but at the same time that we did that, we went into what we call the nutrition transition. At that time long ago, we used to eat what came straight out of the earth. Now we are eating out of tin and from the fast food, and it's everywhere. French fries with 3 meals a day. That change in the diet culture is what is causing our steep increase in the risk factors, especially obesity, and also in the actual diseases too, especially in children. So the main one is hypertension. As we said, 1 in 3 Jamaican adults have hypertension. So hypertension will come from that. That, of course, will lead to heart attack and stroke. Diabetes also will come from these kinds of unhealthy eating. So those are the main diseases, really. I mean, there are other chronic diseases. There's asthma, which is a kind of more allergic problem. There's cancer, which is less lifestyle, although some amount of lifestyle, especially with like tobacco and lung cancer. But a lot of cancer is genetic. And you will find that cancer runs in some families, and several generations might have a problem. But lifestyle can still help, but not as much as it would help with the heart attack and strokes. What I'm saying is that we should do something that we can stick to. So I don't expect people to 100% change overnight because they won't be able to stick to it. So let's not be unrealistic. Let's be realistic. We have a certain taste and we're eating a certain diet right now. We need to make gradual changes that we can stick with. So one of the first changes I would suggest people make is start to mix their drink half and half with water. Give your children water to drink. That is one of the most important things that we can start with, and it's doable. It's doable, you know what I'm saying? Because that sugar in the drink is very dangerous. Because when sugar just gets it in a liquid into your stomach, it's absorbed immediately, and you get a sugar spike, and then the insulin comes and then you get a sugar crash. So the sugar goes down below the normal level, and then you want another soda to bring the sugar back up. So we need to get out of that sweet drink thing.
In the business report, good news for Stationery Office and Supplies Limited. Denita Rodney tells us more in this story and gives us our regular market updates.
Stationery Office and Supplies Limited continued along a profitable path, achieving a monthly sale record of $140 million in February and again beating this record in March with a high of $173 million, a 25% increase. Chairman of SOS Stephen Todd spoke of the contributions that led to such a performance.
As you know, we ramped up our inventory. We increased it significantly. We knew it was going to be a problem with the shipping, so we bulked up on all of that. Also, you saw in the last quarter of last year an uptick in the business side of it, and that has continued right through to the whole of this quarter. So I'm pretty sure that's the reasoning behind it.
He also gave credit to the reopening of the economy as a contributing factor.
Absolutely, it's a direct result of the economy reopening. We saw this uptick in the last quarter of last year. We saw people having more confidence in the economy, certainly in our industry and our market. And we've continued to see that going right through to this quarter. And to speak to going forward, we also see a definite significant increase in sales in the second quarter so far to date compared to last year, 2021.
Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Monday, May 16, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.81. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $120.63. The pound sterling traded for $190.28, and the euro sold for an average of $161.17. The following reflects the movement of the JSE indices in Monday's trading session. The JSE index declined by 4,768 points to close at over 300,000 units. The junior market index declined by 32 points to close at over 4,000 units. The combined market index declined by 4,753 points to close at over 400,000 units. And the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 5,100 145 points to close at over 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 110 stocks, of which 37 advanced, 61 declined, and 12 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, and Cargo Handlers Limited. Stocks declined for Barita Investments Limited, Berger Paints Jamaica Limited, and Blue Power Group Limited. Trading firm were 1834 Investments Limited, Access Financial Services Limited, and CAC 2000 Limited. The following companies represent the overall volume leaders: JFP Limited with over 6 million units, Tropical Battery Company Limited, and Elite Diagnostic Limited with over 2 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Clico Investment Fund was the volume leader with over 95,000 shares, followed by Calypso Macro Index Fund with 40 shares being traded. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Government of Barbados Bond Series B was the volume leader with 356 shares, followed by Insurance Corporation of Barbados Limited trading 55 shares. In market data for oil prices hit its highest in 7 weeks this morning, supported by the European Union's ongoing push for a ban on Russian oil imports that would tighten supply, and as investors focus on higher demand from an easing of China's COVID lockdowns. Brent crude rose $1.26 or 1.1% to $115.50 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate crude gained $1.17 or 1% to $115.37 a barrel. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, Grenadans now have weeks to prepare for a general election after Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell rang the election bell on Saturday. GBN News has the story.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell has already rang the bell as he announced the date for the next general election at the Telescope playing field last Saturday night.
On June Thursday, the 23rd of June, we're ready to vote, sisters and brothers. We're ready to vote Thursday, June 23rd. So you know what that means? What that means, if you do the right thing, we fet in Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, sisters and brothers.
His announcement led to loud cheers.
I love every single one of you all. Thank you all.
Give praise, children. Give praise. Give praise, children. Yeah. Give praise. Give praise, children. Yeah. Give praise. Give praise, children. Oh,
Instructions were already given to Her Excellency Dame Cecilia Grenada to dissolve Parliament today, Monday 16th, to issue the election writ on Tuesday, May 17th, and publication on Wednesday 18th, giving Grenadians hours to get registered to cast their ballots.
Nomination day for the candidates for the next election will be Wednesday, June the 1st. The police officers will be voting, sisters and brothers. They'll be voting on Monday, June the 28th. Police voting. They have to vote.
Grenada's last election was March 13, 2018, with the New National Party winning all 15 seats. For GBN News, I am Rena Pett Thomas reporting.
In Trinidad and Tobago, opposition leader Kamala Persad-Bissessar wants the government to show how it spent the $52 billion allocated for the fiscal year 2022. Mrs. Persad-Bissessar says the finance minister's presentation had nothing for the people, nothing to help with crime, no new projects and no new revenue streams. TTT Live has the details.
She noted that out of the additional $3 billion for fiscal 2022, $1.7 billion is going towards current transfers and subsidies.
A lot of this is to pay bills, pay and tech bills, TSTT bills, WhatsApp bills, rentals and so on. But listen, all those things is from one arm of the state to the next arm of the state. That's not going to be helping people out there. And some of those things date back to 2018. Some of those bills they have been owing since 2018. And then you want to know WASA running bankrupt. You want to know why TSTT is going bankrupt.
The opposition leader also questioned an allocation of $100 million under the new Secondary Road and Rehabilitation Company. The company will fall under the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
For what? Secondary roads. Now, isn't it that the, the regional corporations, they handle secondary roads? Is it then that you're going to take this away from the regional corporations as we run up to the local government elections and therefore do it through a private company, well, a state company, instead of through the regional corporations? And then you can handpick where you want to go rather than giving equal funding.
The Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, has launched the Information Platform on Health and Migration in the Americas, a new initiative to help countries safeguard the right to health of migrants in the region. According to the International Organization for Migration, the Americas currently face one of the largest situations of human displacement in the world, with the number of migrants in Latin America and the Caribbean more than doubling since 2005 to 15 million in 2022. However, data gaps in health and migration present challenges when it comes to the development of informed public health interventions for migrants. PAHO says the new platform aims to address the lack of regional data on migration and health by providing countries with an easy-to-use interactive digital repository of related research and information from across the Americas. This will facilitate knowledge sharing and enable governments to develop policy and initiatives that respond to the needs of a growing number of migrants. It is a pandemic within a pandemic. That is how the scourge of hypertension in Barbados is being described. Deputy Dean in the Faculty of Medical Science at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus and consultant internist at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Dr. Kenneth Connell, also reveals that almost all heart attacks registered at the hospital are linked to the condition. More from CBC Barbados.
In a small island developing country like Barbados, 90% of our heart attacks entering the doors of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital have hypertension. And also the number one revolving door diagnosis that we call at the hospital, where people go in and out, is heart failure, and that is largely driven by hypertension. All these rates are on the increase, so you're absolutely correct in saying a pandemic in a pandemic.
In St. Lucia, a new crop of students are taking steps into uncharted waters as the first to complete the two-day Caribbean Primary Exit Examination, CPEA, launched in 2022. The assessment replaced the traditional Common Entrance Examination in yet another evolution to testing practices. Facing a different challenge for the first time, some students expressed that the examination somewhat differed from expectation. NBC Prime has the report.
Scores of St. Lucian students were today provided with the opportunity to sit the CPEA, which is presented for the first time on St. Lucia. These students, who will have a second day of examinations tomorrow, will be transitioning from primary school education to a secondary environment. Grade 6 students throughout St. Lucia face the conclusion of years of primary level preparation for the transition into secondary school on Thursday, May 12th. The students had a new goal in sight, rising to meet the challenge of a new form of assessment. According to statistics presented by St. Lucia's Ministry of Education, a total of 2,055 students were distributed amongst 22 schools. Education Minister Sean Edward described the transition to the new assessment modality as bold, noting the execution of the examination was a historic moment achieved through the support of the government of St. Lucia.
When the idea of the CPEA was first mooted in 2012, there were a lot of persons who were skeptical about the common entrance as we knew it being replaced by what we believe to be a more progressive form of assessment. And today I'm really happy to be the minister to usher in the CPE.
Following the completion of today's examination, grade 6 students of the Balata and Dame Paulette primary schools reflected on their experience.
It was very good. It was part of my expectations. my teacher taught us well, so I knew exactly what to do.
In sports, national senior women's football team coach Vin Blaine says he will be resigning from the post. Blaine's announcement came following much controversy over a letter from 19 players in the women's squad calling for his removal. The letter was addressed to Jamaica Football Federation President Michael Ricketts, who referred the matter to the organization's technical committee. The technical committee had last week recommended that Blaine retain the position, saying it had found no evidence of the communication and coaching issues the players had cited. JFF board upheld the recommendation. And that's the news on PBC Jamaica. Thank you so much for watching.